She is a leadership, performance, and grit development expert.
It's my mission to meet President Trump and say, I became a citizen under an administration that I didn't particularly want to become a citizen under. I would very much like to have a letter from the White House signed by President Trump. I had 8 seconds before I was about to flatline. I'm still here. So that's how I became the expert in grit. I follow my 5 pillars, and I'll tell you that.
What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today in the studio, folks, I've got a real treat for you. As always, Lara Jones is in the house. Lara Jones. now I'm reading it. I switched it. I said it right 5 times.
Yeah, I know. What was up with that?
Lara Jones is in the house, folks, and you guys are in for a treat because she is a leadership, performance, and grit development expert from the UK. Originally.
Hello.
So how long have you been over here?
I have been over here for nearly 9 years now. Believe it or not, the accent's not going away now.
Which do you like better?
Sorry, British people, but America. America all the way. Hang on. I can even prove it. Here we are.
Why do you love America so much?
I love America because you have freedom over here.
You don't have that in the UK?
No, not really.
What do you mean?
Oh, not really. Everything is very kind of, closed off, or if you say what you want to say, you kind of get told off for it. It's just, I don't know. The mentality. I mean, one of the reasons I left was because it was a very fixed mindset mentality. And if you want to get somewhere in life, you got to believe in yourself and you got to go after it. You just got to go win, right? You got to just go and do it. Most people don't do that.
So folks, she's got a book out right now, Hunt or Be Hunted. So it's basically how to develop grit, right?
That's correct.
And lead like a legend. How does a legend lead?
With grit, Brad, with grit.
So grit to me means like discipline, toughness.
Right.
Stick to itness.
Yep.
What does it mean to you?
Well, I will tell you this, that I never wanted to become the expert in grit, but I did because nearly 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, my youngest son passed away.
Oh man, that's tough.
I nearly lost my life the very same night. I had 8 seconds before I was about to flatline, and I'm still here. So that's how I became the expert in grit, right? It was pretty shocking. I mean, over in the UK, I've gone through quite a number of traumas, right? I've actually gone through 9 traumas in my life. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. And before I came to the States, I said to myself, you know what? Grit is always finding me instead of me choosing it. And I thought, if you choose your own grit before grit chooses you, you're going to be better prepared for it. And that's why I decided to put myself in a situation and force myself in a situation that I had no choice and no option but to use my grit. Because that's how you develop your character, right? It's how you develop other, what I call grit types. So I left the UK, came to the US with absolutely nothing. Literally a few clothes, a laptop, and my brain. And I said, I'm going to make this happen.
You had some money.
No.
No money either?
No.
Where did you go?
Believe it or not, I ended up in New Mexico to begin with. And everyone's like, why New Mexico? It was supposed to be Texas. And that's the way my life took me. I went to New Mexico and lived there for 15 months. I didn't have a social, so I had to have my own business.
San Antonio?
No.
No, that's Texas.
That's Texas. Do we need to have a geography lesson here, Brad?
I got brain fog or what?
I freaking love it. I love it. I know more about the States than you do.
New Mexico. Albuquerque is what I'm thinking.
That's right. Yeah, I was in Albuquerque. Yeah.
Because there's really no other towns there.
I mean, you got
other
Santa
than
Fe.
Little tiny one. Oh, yeah, Santa Fe.
You got Santa Fe, yeah, but no, I was in Albuquerque.
That's about the only two, right?
Pretty much. I mean, you've got other ones around, but
Why did you pick there?
I knew 1 or 2 people there.
Oh.
And so it's better to know someone than no one.
Yeah.
So and that's just how I started to develop my network. And in fact, I knew that I wanted to start my own business. And I thought, okay, well, I don't really know many people here. So you have to network. And I remember walking into a coffee shop and I saw this group of people that was sitting there. And it was every day. I started picking up on the pattern, right? 7 o'clock in the morning. They'd be there every day. I'm thinking, who are these people? Why are they grouping together? They're just friends? What's going on? So one day I just went over and introduced myself. And that was it. They realized they were having a networking group every single day. And there was a mixture of different entrepreneurs. Some were realtors, some were, had roofing companies. There was a mixture of all these different people. And over time, they actually became good friends of mine. And they were there for me during some hard times. And it's about the people, it's the relationships that you build. I've always said, like, don't focus on the money. Like, the money will come. Like, you want to be successful. And even time, right? It's not, a lot of people say, it's time is your greatest currency. But you know what? I nearly didn't have time. I nearly died. So I focus on relationships. That is your greatest currency, because you don't get anywhere in life just on your own.
When you say nearly died, what happened?
Well, I'm going to come on to that. So after I came over here and I started to develop my company and I started building up, like a name for myself, there was actually a period of time where I didn't have enough money to even eat, right? So I went 3 days without even eating.
Even with friends and a network?
No, well, here's the thing. I was too embarrassed, if you will, to ask them for help. And it was only when I was at an event, and it was like an indoor football event. And one of them noticed, like, they just thought something was off. Like, I wasn't, I wasn't buying any food there. And
was it football or soccer?
Well, no, I say football, but I think it was actually soccer. Technically soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Well, no, but was it? I can't remember. It was so long ago, Brad. I don't know. It was like nearly a decade ago. But yes, I do remember that I wasn't buying anything there. And so one of them said, have you eaten? And I said, no. And they said, when was the last time you ate? And I said, like 3 days ago. And
now, why would someone ask you that?
Because I hadn't bought any food there, and I probably didn't have much energy. And they were used to me being very high energy. So, they kind of noticed something was off. And then I kind of disclosed to them, I don't have any cash. I don't have any money. So they took me to a grocery store. They stocked me up for like a week or two. And that gave me, enough time to kind of get back on my feet. But then there was another period of time, not long after, that I then didn't have enough money for rent. So now I was homeless. And one of my very close friends, her name's Monique. She's absolutely incredible. She took me in at my lowest point and gave me a roof over my head. She gave me food. Like, she gave me that shelter. And she said, you can stay here for as long as you want, right? As long as you need. I was there for 5 weeks.
Now, this is before you're a grit expert.
Correct. So at this point, I'm going through all this grit. Right?
Well, I want to go back to the UK. You said your son died?
So my son died over here in America.
Oh.
So I'm getting to that. So I'm painting the story for you so you can see, and also I will tell you, there is a timeline. From a very young age, the age of 14, I was sexually abused. And that was a very tough time in my life. I was a caregiver to my mother, and I was having to, basically become an adult very, very quickly. And anyway, as time went on, there was some turmoil, in the family, and was kind of banished for a few years. I then married an American back then. And then I found out, that he'd betrayed me, and I was devastated beyond belief. And so we ended up divorcing. The same year that we divorced, in fact, it was 4 days after my grandmother had passed away, I found out, what had been going on. And obviously she took me in as like her daughter, because I'd been banished from the family prior, and she was the only one that didn't turn her back on me. And so I had, this traumatic experience with losing her and then losing my marriage within a few days. Fast forward, I then unfortunately was in an abusive relationship, and I was beaten to a pulp. He did get convicted, but it took 2 years.
Is this here or there?
That was in the UK. So okay. This is all leading up. This is like a whole timeline of events, right? And I was beaten pretty badly. And so after that incident, I kind of took a look on my life, and I said, why is this grit keep following me around? Like, what the hell is going on?
People get mad when I interrupt all the time, but I have questions.
Yes, go for it.
Like, why do you keep calling it grit following you around? That sounds like shit following you around.
Well, it is.
Like, grit's a good thing, isn't it?
Grit is a good thing. Grit is a good thing, but not when you're not in control of it, right? Because when grit is following you around, you're not in control of how you're reacting to it in that moment. It's kind of taking over. So you are just, it is a reaction. You're just reacting to it rather than being proactive and trying to prevent it or lessen it. And so there was a lot of shit that's followed me around. I mean, there's other stuff that's happened that I haven't even mentioned on here because quite frankly, I don't want to keep shocking the audience, right? But over time, like all of these different traumas that have happened, I was like, I got to get out of here. I don't want to be in England. I thought maybe it's England, right? Maybe I just got to get the hell out of here. So that's when I came to the States, and I wanted to prove to people that you can start again and you can do anything you want to do when you put your mind to it. But here's the thing. Belief, if you have belief in yourself, that's what motivates you to act. And when you're motivated to act, that's when you can influence your cognition. You influence how you think. When you influence how you think, you can alter your brain chemistry. So you can actually alter the brain process. That's rewiring, reframing the mind. When you do that, you can adopt a growth mindset. And when you adopt a growth mindset, you can then apply the very thing that it is you're trying to learn in the first place. So the question is, how do you create the belief in the first place? You have to take a step back and change your environment. And if you choose your environment and have the autonomy to learn in the way that you want to, that's what's going to give you the belief. And so I changed my environment from England to the US and said, I'm going to do this. And no matter what, even in my tough days when I didn't have any money, my parents said, what are you doing? Like, you need to come back to England. You could walk into a 6-figure salary. I used to be a very successful sales director over there. I helped grow companies from the ground up, right? I had a great time over there. However, if I had done that, what message would that have sent to other people? That's like giving up, because it's an easy out. No, you have to burn the ships, literally. And I was put into a position where I didn't have an option to go back, because if I did, I would not have been able to come back to the US. So I stuck it out. I kept grinding, and I said, no, I believe in myself and I'm going to do this. And I managed to negotiate some office space rent-free for a little while, get myself on my feet. And I started building this business up. And I realized quickly that New Mexico wasn't the place for me, right? I wanted to get out. I liked Arizona because I'd been to Scottsdale, seen the opportunity out there, and I thought that's more me, right? That's where, I think that's where I need to be.
What business?
I had at the time, it's not the same business as what I have now, but at the time I had a coaching business and a marketing business. It's not the same business now, obviously, given what I've gone through. I kind of pivoted and I've changed it, but I was doing some sales coaching as well as marketing. So that's what I started building. And when I moved to Arizona, that's where I met my now ex-husband. And we got married pretty quickly. We ended up having 3 children together, all boys. And I thought to myself, okay, well, my life is made, as in, okay, I've got the family, I got the white picket fence, I got the SUV, I've got the American life. And bearing in mind where I came from, I had a shit show in England, like with all of my personal life and all the traumas I've been through, to suddenly look at the life I've made, right? Look at the life I've built. And I had someone once say to me over in the UK, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like has nothing to do with it. How am I lucky? I've gone through 9 effing traumas, like how is that lucky? That's not luck, right? And so I just never gave up. So anyway, here I am thinking, oh, I've got this made. And that's the most dangerous, when you take your foot off the accelerator and you start to become comfortable. It's in that moment that the biggest shitstorm happens, like the moment you take your eye off the game. And it was, like I said, just over 3 years ago, my youngest son, Jack, passed away. And I nearly lost my life. And that night that happened, I remember being rushed to hospital. Jack was by my side. He'd already died. He was a baby. He'd already died. And they hooked me up to all these machines when I got to the hospital. And I just remember sitting bolt upright. It was this rush of something. And I sat bolt upright and I just said, get me water, I'm going to die. And they said, you can't have water, you can have surgery. And I said, get me water, I'm going to die. Like, I've never been so sure about anything in my life in that particular moment. I knew I was going to die. And they refused. In that very second, I collapsed backwards in the bed. The machine started beeping. My blood pressure plummeted down to 53 over 37. And how I was still alive, I don't know. And basically all my organs were starting to shut down one by one. And the last thing I remember is the doctors and nurses, there were some nurses, they were screaming in the hallway saying, emergency blood transfusion, emergency blood transfusion. I mean, my pupils had stopped dilating, my vision started tunneling, my hearing started going, my speech started to slur. And my coordination had gone. I missed the button like for the emergency to get them in, but obviously the machines were beeping, so they came in. And I remember seeing a crash cart being brought in, and I saw the panic amongst them all. And I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to die. This is it. Now I'm a realist, Brad. So I knew in that moment, I thought, I got two options. One, I accept it and I die. Two, I accept it, probably going to die, but I have to trust they're going to bring me back. So how do I do that? How do I create the belief? And what I said earlier, how do I create the belief? The environment. So I had to change my environment up here. Couldn't change it physically, but I had to change it up here. So I used a technique on myself that I teach a lot of other people called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. And I imagined myself back at home with my living kids. And I said to myself, what are the 5 things you can see? What are the 4 things you can hear? What are the 3 things that you can smell? What are the 2 things you can feel? And what's the 1 thing that you can taste? And as I did that, my brain started to think that I was somewhere else. And so what happened is my heart rate started to slow, which allowed my blood pressure suddenly stopped plummeting, and it allowed the doctors and nurses more time to figure out how to get the 16 gauge needle into my collapsed veins with the blood that saved my life. But here's the thing, Brad. I was rushed into surgery, right? My life was saved. Okay. No one talks about the aftermath. And whether you've been through an experience like me or not, it doesn't matter, right? Because everyone's gone through their own type of adversity. Everyone's gone through really hard times. Everyone's gone through some type of challenge in their life. So think back to that. Think back to that really hard time in your life. Now, how did you deal with it afterwards? A lot of people, when they go through something, whether it's traumatic or something hard, they then think, phew, I got through that. It's the wrong approach. You want to start to analyze it and say to yourself, well, how did I, what I call, grit through it? And so when I woke up from that surgery, the first thing I was asked was, do you want to have your son buried or cremated? Here's a death certificate you got to fill in. Which funeral directors do you want to use? Because you have to transport his body. This is within minutes of me waking up. And I'm thinking, I just lost my son and I nearly died. Like, this is not something I can cope with right now. Now, I'm a very logical person. So this was alien to me. Like, this was very heavily emotional for me. And I'm thinking, I'm a leader. I had a team of people, right, that needed to have put food on their tables for their kids. My ex-husband, you know, he didn't have a job. He helped me a little bit in that business that I had, but he didn't have a job. And so there was no extra income coming in. My kids, my living kids were looking up to me. They were only 2.5 and 1 at the time. And then there's me. Like, everyone's looking at me to be the leader still. And yet here I was going through traumatic experiences here, like double trauma, grief. And I'm thinking, what the hell do I do? And so when I came back from the hospital, I actually ended up with anemia. I couldn't walk or drive unassisted for about 6 weeks. I just didn't have enough blood put in me. And I remember sleeping on the couch. I stayed there for quite a few months. And then there was one night I decided to sleep in my son's room. And I remember waking up. And I remember it vividly because it was January 2022. And it was in Arizona, so the sun's always shining, right? So I walk into the bathroom and there's a mirror in front of me and there's a window behind. And the sun was just streaming in and it bounced off the mirror and onto my face. And it was like a light bulb just going off. And I suddenly said to myself, Lara, you got to wake up today. Your son did not. You get to feel the sun on your skin today. Your son does not. Stop making this about you. It's not about you. It's about others. What are you going to do with all that pain, that grief, that trauma? And how are you going to use it as a fuel to help empower others? And then I realized, I said, well, in order for me to understand how to help others with this, I have to understand how I've grit through all of those prior traumas and how have I grit through the past 4 months. And that's when it dawned on me. And I said, everybody that knows me knows I'm a freaking go-getter. Right? They know I'm a get it done, no shit person, like bullshit. Like, I just get it done and I say it how it is. But that's where I was struggling because I had emotional attachment. And that's when I realized whether you're in a company, a team, at home, half the people you're around are going to be logical thinkers and the other half are going to be emotional thinkers. So how do you marry the two, right? How do you deal with both? Like I said, I'm more dominant logical. So now I was having to tap into, oh shit, how do I handle all these emotions when I'm trying to make decisions? So instead of just being able to get back up and brush things off, I said, I've got to be able to reframe how I think. Now, people that may not know this about me, I do have a background in psychology, right? I'm educated in psychology, mental health counseling, and also neuroscience. So I pull a lot from the cognitive sciences. And I said to myself, I've got to start looking at the situation differently. So instead of saying, look what was taken from me, I started saying, look what was given to me. And when you start to change one or two words in a sentence that are negative into the positive, it starts to rewire how you think. You see, a lot of people don't know this, but 80% of your thoughts are negative and 90% are repetitive. So that means even you here, Brad, today, sitting here.
Well, not me.
You may have had some negative thoughts come in and you might deny it, right? But we all do, right? But we're very quick to push it away almost immediately. And the problem with that is, think of it like a revolving door, right? You have these negative thoughts that come in, you try to push it away. What does that revolving door do? Comes right back around and smacks you in the face. So the way to actually handle any negative language in your head is to acknowledge it, not accept it. You don't have to accept it, but just acknowledge it and say to yourself in that moment, how is this serving me? Is this serving me? And if it's not, you put it in a box, you put it on the shelf. And now your brain has allowed yourself, you've now processed it, right? But it knows it can come back to it if it needs to, but it knows it's not helping it in that moment, so we can store it away. But you're not making your brain panic thinking it hasn't processed that. So you've now freed up space, just much like a computer. You've now freed up space to allow other information to come in that's going to be positive. And now this is a process that you have to do daily, right? And I mean, I teach heavily on this, on reframing and getting things done, taking action. But you have to do this consistently. This is not an overnight thing. And obviously I teach a lot of techniques to be able to do that. But then I said to myself, all right, well, if I'm able to get it done and reframe how I think, what does that do? It now impacts others. Now I've got a tool that's going to be able to influence others in a huge way. Right? So now I'm able to impact others. And that means I've got to take responsibility for all of my actions and inactions because they all have consequences. Now, what have I just spelt? Get it done, reframe thinking, impact others, take responsibility. What are the first letters of all that? Grit. Right? It's grit. So now I've identified the 4 elements of grit. But I said to myself, well, great, now I can talk about it. Wonderful. So can a million other people talk about grit through their experiences. That's not enough. That is not enough. I'm all about creating the belief in people. How do you do that? Changing the environment, right? So in other words, I now have to get people to understand, listen, you all have grit. Everyone has grit. You just have different levels of it. And once you understand which grit type you are, where are you more dominant? What is your secondary trait? What is the third? What is the fourth? You can change your whole life. You can change, the whole game is going to change. So then I said, okay, I've got to identify the 4 types of grit. And this is not personality. This is how you handle situations under stress, under challenges, under, in like traumas, under adversity. And so I identified the 4 types of grit, which is the go-getter, the reframer, the innovator, the trustworthy titan. I said, great. And I actually developed an assessment called the Grit Type Indicator. And that's going to be out in due course. But the Grit Type Indicator basically will tell you, okay, this is where you're more dominant. This is your secondary trait. This is what roles you're most suited to. This is how you handle situations. This is where you could do better, right? All of this stuff, fantastic. So now I've got 4 elements, 4 types. Again, how now do I develop a system for people to understand how they get to that growth point and sustain it? So how do they achieve high performance and sustain it? Because just talking about grit isn't enough, right? You've got to develop it. And it's like a habit, right? And a muscle. Grit can grow. Grit can grow. I mean, think of it. When you're a baby, right? You learn how to walk. You learn how to talk. You fall down so many times you don't remember, but you keep getting back up. Why? Because it's innate, right? You have the grit inside you. And so the only difference between when you were a baby and you were really gritty to as an adult, where you might be around some people that aren't as gritty, what's the difference? It's the environment in which they've been brought up in, or the environment in which they're surrounded in. And if you want to, I've always said this, if you want to be a lion, you train with them. You train with them. I became a competitive athlete a few years ago, and I said to myself, we're all human. So if they can do it, I can do it. You just have to start somewhere. So I had to create that belief in others that you can do anything you want to do. So then I said, okay, with this system, where do most people like to be? Comfort, right? Probably not you and me, Brad, but most people like to be in comfort.
I sure do.
You like to be in comfort?
I know it's not good for me, but I like it.
You like to be in comfort, right? Maybe
well, I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, only because I know that's where you dwindle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of like to be challenged. I kind of like to be uncomfortable, but I mean, I truly, honestly like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I wish comfort is where the strength was found.
Right. But well, here's
Because
the
I
thing.
sure love it.
You can keep creating new comforts. So let me explain. So if you love your comfort, right, you stay in comfort. Most people feel safe, and that's why a lot of people don't achieve what it is they want to achieve.
That's right.
Right. So we're now in comfort. Now, what's on the other side of comfort?
Discomfort.
Yeah, which is also known as
Pain, power.
Yeah, fear. Right, fear. And then I usually ask people, like, what's on the other side of fear?
Strength.
Okay.
Certainty.
Okay. Well,
What depends on what do you mean by the other side?
Well, a lot of people will say to me, that's where the growth happens, right, on the other side of fear. And I say, no. There's actually a gap missing between fear and growth. So imagine it's 4 semicircles, right? You've got comfort down here. We have growth at the top. The other side of comfort is fear. There's a gap above that. And that's what I like to call the learning zone. And you know why there's a gap? Because as a society, we have a growing need for instant gratification.
That's right.
Yeah. Everybody wants things now. Well, let me tell you, you're a human being. You have a brain. Your brain has to process information. It loves a system. And so if you try to rush that process and you're not allowing it to process information, it's going to kick you right back down to what you know, which is your comfort. And that's why most people struggle and they don't achieve what it is they want to achieve. So then I say to them, well, how do we get out of comfort and get into fear? That is where you have to utilize the G in grit. In other words, you've got to get things done, you've got to take action, and you've got to make it happen. That's actually easier to teach than most people think. I've done it many times with people.
Do you use a whiteboard?
Oh, I love a whiteboard. Oh, Brad, if we had a whiteboard in here, I'd be giving a whole session right now. I love a whiteboard. I'm a whiteboard girl, yeah.
So if there's somebody that like says, I just don't like getting out of my comfort zone, what would you say to them?
I'd say, tell me what you mean by you don't like. What is it about getting out of comfort that scares you, right? So I need to understand where their fears are.
What if they said, it doesn't really scare me, it just feels bad?
Okay, well, I'm going to say to them that there is a fear there, and it's one of 3 things. They either have a fear of the unknown, they either have a fear of failure, or they have a fear of imperfection. So it's one of those 3. And then once I can identify which one of those 3 it is, in fact, it could be all 3, right? But once I identify that, I can then get to the root cause of the problem. And mostly, it's probably something that stemmed from many years ago in their past.
I think most of us have a fear of the unknown.
Yeah. I mean, I would be, if anyone told me they didn't have a fear of the unknown, I think I'd call them a liar, quite frankly, because that's actually how our brains operate. Everyone has some element of the fear of the unknown.
Yeah. Like if you were told to go into a dark house with the lights out, you hear sounds and you don't know what it is, you get all scared. But if you flipped on the light and you realized it was just whatever it was, then all of a sudden your fear dissipates. Yeah.
Well, that's because our brain likes to prepare for the worst, right? It likes to think that there's something. I mean, that's how we're wired. Like 10,000 years ago, we were
survival.
Survival. Exactly. It's survival. And so that's why getting out of, once you're in that fear zone, one of 2 things is going to happen to you. Either one, you don't have the right tools and strategies to get out of the fear zone into the learning zone. And so therefore you're just going to run straight back to comfort. Or you're going to say, no, I'm going to grind this out. But again, without the right tools, you start to get burnt out, right? Because your stress levels increase, your anxiety levels increase. That's going to lead to burnout. Burnout leads to poor performance. And poor performance is going to lead to either getting you fired or you're going to leave. So it's not good for anyone, right? Now you've got a recruitment issue. You've got a retention issue. That person now has low self-esteem, low self-worth. It's just not good for anyone. So how do we get out of that fear zone and get into the learning zone? That arguably is one of the most crucial, critical elements of the grit system. And that's where you have to utilize the R in grit. You have to be able to reframe how you think about the situation. Like when my son passed, how easy would it have been for me to hide away and fall into this dark pit? And would anyone blame me? No, they wouldn't. But what would that have shown? What would that have done? Because it's bigger than yourself, right? It's not about you. And that's what I realized. When you stop putting yourself first, when you stop saying this is about me and you start saying, how is this going to help serve others? How is this going to impact others in a powerful way to create the belief in them, right? And I do like to say, what are you doing today to get you to where you need to be tomorrow? That's a huge saying that I've lived by. And I've also said, if you don't know how to do something, You say yes, you do it anyway, and you figure it out later. That's quite an action of a G, and we're going to get to that in a minute because I'm going to identify your grit type, Brad. But pretty sure I know what it is anyway. But we'll get to that. But that R in grit is arguably the most important. You have to be able to reframe how you think about the situation, because grit isn't about running away from the situation. It's about changing your perspective in the midst of the situation. And so once you're able to identify what those tools are and those strategies, obviously that's something that, I heavily teach on, and you're in the learning zone, that's where the magic happens, right? Now you want to stay in the learning zone long enough to be able to learn, apply what it is that you've learned, because that's where the practical application comes in. But you don't want to stay in there too long, because otherwise it's like reading a really good book, putting it on the shelf, and it's collecting dust. What good is that doing for anyone? Nothing, right? Now, reframers are notorious for that because they have a fear of imperfection. So they are notorious for learning all the information, getting all the knowledge, but not acting on it, right? Not executing on it. The G's are really good at executing. Sometimes they miss some of the details. So there's a give and take. But once you're in that learning zone, how do we now get out of that and get into growth? That is where we have to utilize the I in grit, and you've got to be able to impact others through innovation. Because if you can innovate your way out of a challenge, it's not a challenge anymore. It's an opportunity. And that's where the growth happens. And now you're at the top here, right? Of those 4 semicircles I mentioned. Now you're at the top. And that's where the T comes in, because now you've got to take responsibility to start that whole process all over again. And where your new growth zones just happened, that now becomes your new comfort. So if you like to be in comfort, keep going through this process. Just keep growing that comfort, right? Bigger and bigger and bigger. And then one day you'll look back and you'll be like, holy crap, look how far I've come. I've done that. Look how far I've come from being homeless with no money, losing my child, having to cremate my son, which, let me tell you, that is the worst pain anybody can ever go through, is to lose your child. And I've gone through a series of other terrible traumas, but I'm still here. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm still here to this day. I'm out there. I'm making things happen. I'm showing people that, listen, you can kick me down as much as you want. I will always get back up and fight. Because I'm the hunter. And the moment you hesitate, you become the hunted. And I'm not going to let that happen.
Why? Why are you so driven by that?
Being the hunter? Because what's the option? What's the option? You fall down. You don't do anything about it. You stay in a dark hole. You just let people,
did something happen to make you like that?
I was a very young age when I went through one of my first traumas. And, even into my teenage years, went through some terrible traumas. Did
it make you angry inside?
Oh, yeah.
So you had to figure this out yourself? You didn't have anybody to help?
No.
You just thought through it and talked yourself through it?
Yeah. Well, I actually got involved with the wrong crowd for a little bit, right? I never did drugs, but, they were doing drugs around me. And I remember one of them saying, they tried to pressure me into doing some drugs, and I never did. But
what kind of drugs?
Cocaine. And one of them
should have tried it.
Well,
I'm joking, kids. I'm joking. Don't
do that.
It doesn't lead anywhere. I know that to be true.
Right. Yeah.
I was just joking for all the listeners. I got to remember that I have some influence, and I always forget that.
Yeah.
So when I joke, people don't know I'm joking. Yeah. That was a joke, kids.
That was a joke. Do not listen to Brad on that. That was a joke.
Yeah, the truth is, have I done cocaine? Sure, dude. I was hooked on crack for 3 days, I tell people. But I've tried a bunch of things. I can promise you, if I could go back, I wouldn't even have tried it. Why? It leads nowhere. There's no reason for it. And quite honestly, thankfully, I'm not one of those addicted types.
Right. Because
I was able to just boom. Maybe because I have grit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will tell you that I did drink. I don't now. In fact, I follow my 5 pillars, and I will tell you that if you follow these 5 pillars, because a lot of people say, well, grit sounds great, but then it sounds tiring. Like you could burn out from it. And I say, no, there's a myth going around that people think that grit is going to burn you out. I say, listen, grit unchecked is what's going to burn you out. Grit doesn't actually burn you out, but you've got to follow the 5 pillars. You want to hear what they are, Brad?
I do.
Do you know them? No,
I don't know them.
You need to read the book.
I haven't read the book yet.
Why haven't you read the book? Come on now.
You just gave it to me.
All right. Well, fair enough. All right. 1, you got to drink at least a gallon of water a day. Hydration. See, right here.
It's almost like you've followed all my stuff and condensed it into one.
I love it.
Common book.
Well, maybe, you never know, right?
Because hydration is very important.
Oh, it's huge.
I tell people that's like a key.
Yep. I actually get regular IVs.
What's the next one?
Next one, 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night.
Ew, I can't.
Yeah, see, everyone gives me that reaction.
Well, I try to do it. I just can't.
Okay. Trying and doing is different.
That's correct. I'm not doing. I'm simply wishing.
Right. Well, that's because you're not making it a priority.
Well, exactly. I won't. In order to do it, supposedly I've got to like stop looking at my phone for 3 hours and before go get blackout curtains.
You know what that
do
requires?
Do this, do that, get a heavy blanket, all this crap. It's like, listen, I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up when my body wakes up, because I would think if I was really that tired, my body would stay asleep.
Right. But do you know, like if you went to bed between 9 and 10 o'clock at night, it's like okay.
That'd make me.
Real talk here. Okay. It's like, I've got kids, right? It's like a baby. So if you put that kid to bed, most people think, if I put them to bed a bit later, they're going to sleep in. Wrong. Not true. They're going to actually wake up earlier. When you put a kid to bed earlier, they actually sleep a lot longer. I just put my kids to bed at like 6:30. They sleep all the way through to like 7:30. Adults are the same, right? If we go to bed between 9 and 10, we're going to sleep through. I mean, okay, there are exceptions. People may have sleep disorders, or I get it. There are exceptions to the rule, but...
You go to bed at 9 or 10?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will admit, lately I haven't, but yes, I'm extremely disciplined with that. I mean, I was, because I'm also an athlete and I train, my body needs the rest.
Yeah,
right?
Rest is important. That is a pillar. What's the third one?
Third one is eating clean, so no processed foods. Now,
well, that's difficult this day and age.
Okay, all right. Well, let's change that mentality, shall we? Let's just do some reframing right here. What's difficult about it?
Well, there's not a lot of real food out there.
Right. So what do we have to do?
Hunt and forage.
Exactly. You hunt for the good food. You meal prep.
Oh,
right?
See again, way too much for me.
Yeah, no, that's just your mentality around it. Only takes a few hours.
I'm just teeing up good stuff so you can, this is what people are thinking.
Yeah. I love it. But I would tell you that when people hear meal prep, they may say, oh God, that sounds like work. Well, you know what? To be healthy, maybe it does require some effing work.
Well, nowadays, I think there's some healthy choices out there.
No,
you got to look.
There's
a restaurant called Flower Child.
Yep.
I go there a lot. Protein House.
Oh, I love Protein House. Oh my God, give me some Protein House all the time. Yeah, that's my go-to actually. I go to Protein House when I'm, if I need something. But let me tell you, when I travel, even like here today, I don't know where my bag is, but even here today, I carry half my bag is just for snacks. Like I have clean snacks that I carry everywhere.
Like what?
Chopsticks, these turkey chopsticks. I have my protein bars and my protein shake. I carry my creatine in there.
You got to look at your ingredients. Just because they're a protein bar doesn't make it healthy.
No, but I'm very careful about which protein bars I'm actually utilizing. I should disclose that.
The best tasting ones, First Form.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm not saying that just because my buddy owns it.
Oh, you go.
It's like...
Oh, I know First Form. Yeah, I use some of his.
First Form.
Yeah, I do.
Protein bars are like frickin' candy bars. They can't... Yeah. I always tell him, I'm like, dude, these can't be healthy. He's like, dude, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
They're delicious.
Yeah.
First Form, guys. Go try them.
Love it. I love it.
When are you going to come out with your own?
Okay. I love that you said that. So I've actually been looking into that. I actually want to create a whole line of this because I'm so strong on water, sleep, eating clean, fitness, by the way, is another one. But the fourth one, I'll come back to what you just asked me, but the fourth one is getting some sunlight on your skin for 10, 15 minutes a day. Right. And then the fifth one is exercise, right? At least 5 days a week for 30 minutes, elevating your heart rate.
Those are the pillars?
Those are the 5 pillars. There are some 2 bonus pillars. Do you want to hear what they are?
The 2 what?
2 bonus pillars.
Yeah.
This is where I shook the audience and they're putting me in like, oh, hell no. The 6th one, no alcohol. The 7th one, it's probably the toughest one that anyone can do, is what I'm hearing anyway. No caffeine. everyone looks at me as if I'm crazy. And I said, listen, what's the first thing that you do when what's the first drink you have when you wake up? And they say coffee. And I said, okay, let me ask you, are you dehydrated or hydrated when you wake up? And I said, dehydrated, right? Okay, so let me ask you, Brad, does coffee dehydrate you or hydrate you?
D.
Okay, so why do people drink coffee in the morning? Not making sense to me. So then I say to them, well, then they say, okay, well, I'll start drinking water. And I say, actually, the first thing you should do is drink electrolytes. And this is where I want to bring my own brand out for electrolytes, because I'm huge on this, and I'm very, very clean. Like, it's not just any old electrolytes. I actually currently use Re-Light. I do. I love Re-Light. That is my go-to.
How did I know that?
Yeah, how did you know that?
It's what I use.
Oh, really? I like the mango flavor.
It's just that's the best one, I think.
Yeah, it is. I love
so
that
far.
You use Re-Light. That's funny. Yeah, I love Re-Light. I carry it everywhere with me. So that's what I have first thing in the morning. But going back to what you asked me, yes, I would like to bring my own supplements out, my own brand out. I think that there's a lot of people that do look up to what I'm doing, and they realize, oh, I'm onto something here, like with how I operate. Now, I haven't had caffeine or alcohol in a long time. Occasionally,
you have decaf coffee?
I have decaf coffee. I do love the taste of coffee. So you could argue, okay, there were the trace elements of caffeine in that, but not enough to affect you. Now, I also don't drink caffeine because it does give me heart palpitations. So there's also a health element there. But I'm a big believer in, why do you need a drug in your body? You don't.
Feels good.
Now, it might feel good in the moment.
At the end of the day, I'm not a big coffee crazy guy. Like, I can drink coffee every day for 6 months and then not drink it for 6 months.
Well, I mean,
so it's not really addicting to me.
That's good. But most people aren't like you, Brad.
Well, I was intermittent fasting. I still am intermittently, but I would drink coffee in the morning because it just kept my mind off eating. I wanted to eat. Mm-hmm. And so I just drink a cup of black coffee, and next thing you know, I'm having 2. Next thing you know, I'm having 3. Next thing you know, I'm having 4. And didn't really bother me. And then the dehydration part kicked in. My doctor was talking to me because I have a concierge doctor that gives me all this information. And I said I was having like 5-6 cups of coffee a day. He goes, oh, bro, you don't want to do that. You can have 1 or 2, but like, you don't want to just pound it all day. Mm. So I just said, okay, I'll stop. He goes, well, you don't have to stop. I mean, I know you need your coffee. I'm not one of those guys. I'm lucky. I don't need coffee to wake up.
Right.
Thankfully, because I know a lot of people just stressing over a coffee.
Yeah.
It might be their body just wanting that caffeine.
It is.
Nicotine too. Yeah. But nicotine's good for you. Most people don't know this. Google it. Research it. Nicotine.
Nicotine?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's I haven't heard that, Brad. I'm just going to.
Nicotine. Matter of fact, where's my nicotine? Now that's a little thing that I like, and I am probably addicted to that, to where when I don't do it, I want to. Right. To me, that's addiction.
Yeah.
Like when you know you shouldn't, but you do anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not really addicted to anything. Nicotine a little bit, but it's also good for you. Google it. You have nicotine receptors in your body.
Okay.
There's a doctor out there talking about nicotine is like, fights off COVID and all these different diseases. He advocates 7 milligrams a day.
Oh, wow.
Of nicotine.
Well, you're educating me now. I mean,
you should look it up.
Yeah, no, I will.
It's crazy. I keep abreast on latest trends and whatnot, like parasite cleansing.
Oh yeah. No, I know all about that.
Well, there's a lot of people out there with sickness and autoimmune and eczema and psoriasis and cancer.
Yep.
And in reality, it's parasites.
It is parasites.
And they've literally, misdiagnosed it.
100%.
And people have died, when in reality, all they had to do was a parasite cleanse.
Yeah.
Now, not in all cases, but in a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's like I keep abreast on that stuff.
You and I are very alike in that.
Hydration, very smart.
Yes.
It affects the body. It affects the mind. It affects the neurons.
Yep.
Your brain.
Well, I say to people, your brain is an organ.
Sure
So
is.
give it what it needs. Why are you starving it of water? Why are you starving it of sleep? You got to remember that next time.
Sleep's my tough point. I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
But hydration is awesome. What else did you say? You said sleep.
Eating clean.
Eating clean.
Nutrition.
I eat clean as hell.
Yeah.
I don't drink. really.
Well, those are bonus pillars. So the 5 main pillars that I follow is, I mean, I follow all of them, but the 5 main ones that I teach people is the hydration, the sleep, the eating clean, sunlight, right? Getting some sunlight on your skin.
Well, I'm in Las Vegas, so I can't help that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm in Arizona, so we're lucky in that sense.
Is that where you live? Yes. Scottsdale?
Yeah, we're just south of Scottsdale.
So what does your normal day look like? Are you out speaking on stages, coaching freaking corporate groups or?
Yeah, well, no day looks the same, Brad. You know, I travel all over the country. In fact, the world. I'm actually flying to England this coming week, you know. So I fly all over the place, speaking on stages, sometimes in front of a few thousand people. And so I'm giving keynotes. I'm a keynote speaker.
Tomorrow I'm interviewing the Duchess of York.
Oh, are you?
Sarah Ferguson.
Are you really?
What should I ask her?
Oh, what should you ask? Ooh, that's a great question. What should you ask Sarah Ferguson? I need to think about that. Ask me at the end. I'll have to have a little think.
So you being from there, what do you think of the royal family?
Ooh.
Do people love them over there?
I haven't been over there in nearly 9 years. So you got to remember, like I'm sure a lot of things have changed. I think there's a lot of respect for the royal family over there. I think it's like anywhere. There's going to be a mixture of opinions.
I just can't put my head around, I don't want to say worshiping, but basically obeying and bowing down to a royal family simply because they were royal at some point way in the past when there were kings. And now because that bloodline just continued all the way through. So none of us have a chance. If we're not born in the lucky sperm club, we're just shit out of luck.
Right.
I don't like that deal. Yeah. At least in America, you could be president. I mean, look at J.D. Vance. Have you watched that movie?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen his story?
Yeah.
Dude, now he's the vice president, and I'll bet you anything he becomes the next president. Right. And dude, that's awesome. That's never happening in the UK.
No.
If you're not born in the right family, you're toast.
Yeah. But I will say that the government are the ones that make the decisions over there.
But you could marry into it.
You can marry into it.
I think that's what Sarah did.
Yes.
And Kate Middleton.
Oh, yes. Kate Middleton
and Meghan
did.
Markle.
Yes.
And Diana.
Yes. Although, yes.
So you got to be female. You had that going for you.
Yeah.
The dudes, they're screwed. Unless they're born in, they're not getting in. You can't marry a royal princess and become a prince, could you?
No. I'm trying to think about that, actually. God, it's been so long.
Are you a real Brit? I thought you guys knew these things.
Listen, Brad, look, I wear the American flag now. Do you know I actually became an American citizen last year?
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It took me, at that point, 8 years, but that was my dream, always to become an American citizen. I think there were people that didn't believe I was going to make it. And I said, I made it.
Is it really that difficult?
Oh, yeah. It's not easy.
What do they make you do?
Well, there's a whole process. It takes years. You know, you have to, well, I mean, I married an American. That's probably the easiest way to become an American citizen, but some people don't have that and it's tough for them, right? Obviously now I'm divorced, but in the same breath, I guess it allowed me to get my green card. My green card, then, you know, after you have like a conditional green card. So you're here for like 2 years, it's conditions. And then after that, you can extend it for, have the conditions taken off. So you can extend it for a further 3. And then at that point, you say, okay, do I want to become a citizen or do I just want to extend my green card? I will tell you, and I don't mind saying this in this podcast because I think your listeners are very aligned with how we think. So I'm just going to throw it out there. But I was holding off on becoming a citizen until Trump came into power. And I will say that I was frustrated so much. And I thought I have to become a citizen before that happens so I can vote for him. And so now it's my mission to meet President Trump and say, listen, I became a citizen under an administration that I didn't particularly want to become a citizen under. And now I have a letter from the White House welcoming me as a citizen to this country, but it's signed by the former president. I would very much like to have a letter from the White House signed by President Trump welcoming me to this country because I used freaking grit to get to where I am today. I went through so much hardship and I'm here today, and I got to vote for him. And so I'd really like to have a letter from the White House signed by President Trump himself so I can frame that. And I'm a very proud American. So I want to share that with the audience because I want people to understand that, listen, don't ever give up on your dreams. Don't ever give up on, like, if someone tells you something's too hard, okay, it might be too hard for them. Does that mean it's too hard for you? No, it's just your mentality, right?
Yeah, they're projecting their limitations on you.
Yeah. Do you think that Kate Middleton thought she was ever going to be a princess or a queen at some point when she was younger? Probably not.
Probably not.
No, probably not. Look at her now.
Do you think she regrets it?
No. God, no. No, not
Do you
at all.
think she knew dude was going to go bald?
I think every man goes bald at some point, right?
No.
Well, maybe, I don't know. You're not bald, but maybe another 20 years. You never know, Brad.
Not every man goes bald, but
well, no.
I was just having fun with the royal family.
It's funny.
Only because you're from UK.
That's true. I'm from the UK, but America's home. Let me tell you, every time
You're an
I used
American
to,
now.
I'm American now.
Good for you. And
Thank
again,
you.
I mean, I've always been a proud American. People that don't like America, I don't understand why. Now, when there's rude ass Americans traveling abroad being loud, obnoxious dickheads,
Yeah.
you know, again, that's embarrassing to an American because we're not all like this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when it boils down to it, dude, America, I believe, because I've traveled all over. And when
Yeah.
I get back, I'm like thankful that I am
100%.
coming back to the United States.
Yes. Let me tell you, every time I came over to the US, oh, I love that.
When I went to London, dude, the food and everything was gray and the food was kind of bland. I liked the history.
Mm-hmm.
Like I loved the history. It was cool walking around London and, you know, seeing all the cool shit. And I love the history because it's got history. U.S. doesn't really have history, but, you know, London does and, you know, Europe does. But I didn't like, in London specifically, the food, the hotel rooms were dinky. I just didn't like it. Like I wouldn't want to live there. I would love to. I love to visit London,
Right.
but
I didn't want to live there either.
Where did you live in UK?
It was about 30 miles north of London. I actually grew up in-
Birmingham,
No,
Yorkshire.
not Birmingham. No, my God, no. They speak funny up there.
Luton.
No. That was actually where I was born.
Luton. Did you know Andrew? Andrew Tate.
No, I did not. Everyone always asks me, do you know this person? Do you know that person? And I'm like, listen, do you know there's 68 million people in England? No, I do. No. But I was born in Luton, but I grew up in a place called Dunstable. So shout out to all my past high schoolers. Dunstable, yay.
Did you eat Yorkshire pudding?
I did. My mum makes a
Spotted
fantastic.
dick.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No,
What
I
is
wasn't
that?
such a fan. Do you know? I don't remember. It was like some type of a pudding. I
With
don't know.
raisins in it?
I think so. I can't quite
Why'd
remember.
they call it dick?
Brad, you're asking. Who knows? Who freaking knows? You're asking me questions that, quite frankly, I don't even know anymore. I probably know more about America than most Americans because I had to take the freaking test.
And you've been here 9 years?
I've been here nearly 9 years. Yes, I'm heading back to the UK for the very first time.
I'd almost question it if the accent wasn't there. Be like, how do you not know why they do the things they do?
Well, let me tell you, Brad. My mother is German. So I grew up on German food. I didn't really grow up on British food. Now, we did have a roast every Sunday. My mum used to make fantastic roast. She still does.
Roast is British?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's British.
So let me ask you a question with the book. Hunter Be Hunted. You want to develop grit by the definition of the word grit or by your acronym? Because the acronym's good. It's you know, framing and, you know, whatnot. But the word grit to me means like, you know, staying powered.
Yeah.
Tough. Power through regardless.
Yeah.
Is that?
What it is, it's just you sometimes have to use different types of grit to get there. So if there's someone that is not like, okay, let me just ask you some questions, right?
Are you going to find out what kind of grit I am right now?
Okay. So would you, if you were in a situation, put yourself in some type of a challenge, a hardship, and shit hit the fan, right? Are you going to take control? Or are you going to expect somebody else to lead the way? Okay. And how you approach that situation with you taking control, are you going to think with your brain? Are you going to think logically? Or are you going to start thinking about the people and how they feel about that situation?
100% logical.
Right. Okay. Are you going to act with speed, or are you going to hesitate because you have to find out some of the details and some of the facts before you can move forward?
Depends on the situation, but likely speed.
Okay. Now, would you say that you would be more, if somebody tried to challenge you in that situation, are you going to be more authoritative over them, or are you going to allow them to view their opinion?
I would, again, depends on the situation, but I would hope that I would listen, because I like to be open-minded, and I would listen, but quickly decide on whatever it is they're saying, either aligns or it doesn't.
Okay.
In other words, I would listen, because I'm a fair guy.
Yeah, but you're still going to go whatever you think is going to think. If
Well,
they
that's
say,
period.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
Okay.
Unless you can convince me out of where I'm going, I'm heading that way.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm also not controlling. So if the whole group didn't agree, I'd be like, good luck, because I
Right.
trust myself.
Yep, I know exactly what you are. Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what type you are. But just for the sake of the audience, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. So would you say that if you had a number of options in front of you and you thought, okay, this is the one that I need to go with. Oh, but there could be something here too. Oh, wait a minute, there's another one over here. Would you say you are that type and you'd consider everything, or you would literally just say, no, I don't give a shit about all these other distractions here. This is the one I'm going with?
Well, the way you pose it, it makes me answer that one. But, I do quickly assess. I will quickly assess the options and choose the one and not be worried about the wrong choice.
Right.
But I will assess each option.
Do you avoid conflict, or do you not care about conflict?
I don't avoid it, but I also don't look for it.
Right. Right. But would you feel uncomfortable with conflict?
Depends on the situation, but not really.
Okay. Okay.
That depends on physical conflict,
Yeah.
Where you could get injured. I'm less after that. In other words, like that'll make me stop and think for a moment. But again, depends on the situation. It doesn't really matter what kind of conflict it is. I don't really, I don't want it, but in some cases it's actually healthy for you. It's actually going to cause you to, that is your best option, the conflict, but in reality, it all depends what you're asking, but mainly I would say, no, I'm not too worried about conflict.
What about if you had a situation and you had all the knowledge, right? You had every single detail. You've analyzed all the details. Maybe not you, maybe somebody else has done that for you, but you've got all the details. Are you going to execute, or are you going to sit back and say, actually, I've just got to perfect this a little bit more?
Execute.
Okay. I can tell you with 100% certainty, Brad, that you are 100% a G. You are a go-getter.
I'm a G.
You're a G. You're
That's
a G,
right.
baby. You're a G. All right.
But I'm also a reframer.
Right. Well, let me tell you. Okay. So yes, you have all four types in you. You just have different levels of them. But your more dominant type is the G. You're probably a very heavy G, right?
I'm a big OG.
Big OG, right?
I'm an OG.
I love that. You're an OG. Well, I would tell you, I'm also a G, right? So I recognize that immediately in others, like go-getters, the get it done mentality. I also want to know what your secondary trait is, what your third and what your fourth is. Now, that is where you have to take the grit type indicator, because there's like 120 questions with that thing.
Where can I take this?
Well, it's going to be out in due course. So what I'm going to say to the listeners is, if they go to my Instagram, which is official Lara Jones.
Lara.
Yeah, Lara. Thank you, Brad. Don't put a U in it. It's official Lara Jones, Lara. If they go to my Instagram and they follow me on there, so follow me to be able to keep up to date for when this is going to be out. But if they write the word grit on like my latest post, then I will send them a link to take that grit type indicator for when it comes out.
And that will tell them what type of grit they have.
Oh yes, but it's not just about the dominant grit. It's going to give you a really detailed overview of your grit type based on those four grits, right? So
yeah, but what if I'm a T?
You're not a T. I can 100% guarantee you are not a T.
What if someone's
T's your
a T?
lowest one. What's that?
What if someone takes it and they're a T?
Okay, so
Are you trying to become a G?
they need to have elements of that G in. Okay, so T's and G's are the complete opposite, right? They're complete opposite. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a T. My mum's a T, right? There's nothing wrong with T's. They just approach situations differently. Now, there's a time and place for that. However, they absolutely 100% are going to need to get better at getting their G into gear, because otherwise they're forever going to get scared in situations. They're not going to take action. They're going to continue to be hunted, and they're going to hesitate, and hesitation kills.
See, that's the part that confuses me about your grit thing. Because when I hear grit, that's tough, discipline, and people need it. Mm-hmm. People need a little bit of grit, I think, to succeed.
Yeah.
Because again,
they do.
I kind of downplay how tough it's been for me because I reframe very well. Mm-hmm. Like someone asked me, what is it like when you hit rock bottom? I'm like, I really haven't hit rock bottom. They're like, what? Listen to your stories. Yeah, but that was, I reframe it all. Mm-hmm. I reframe failures into lessons.
Yep.
So I don't
100%.
fail. I learn, I do a lot of that. So I think you're in need of grit if you're going to succeed, because based on my experience, if I didn't stick to it and power through it and reframe and just keep going, I wouldn't be where I'm at. That's for sure. This company that you're sitting in here, a lot of people come in here and they're like, they don't even know I have, this company. And then walking in, they're like, damn, dude, what is this place?
Yeah.
Well, I started it. Until 8 years, it didn't make a dime. Everyone said it would never work. No one's ever going to do that. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And I just kept powering through because I knew that I was correct. Mm-hmm. And I knew that, this is the way it's going to be. And now,
so that belief.
But that was grit.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have been here without grit.
That's true.
That's why I was excited for you to come on the show and say, hey, how do somebody build grit and create grit?
Yep.
But what confuses me is your acronym, because again, as long as they're a T type grit, as long as they got grit, but you're saying, no, you want to be a G.
You have to build,
you want to be a G.
I'm going to say that because, we're G's, right? But it doesn't mean if you're not a G, it doesn't mean you don't have grit. It doesn't. It just means that you approach the situation differently. So T's still have grit. They just have a different way of approaching it. Let me give you an example. So if you are in a boardroom, okay, and you've got, the G's are going to be like this. They're going to come in and they're just going to say, all right, here's the agenda. We've got 20 minutes. Let's just get this shit done and we're out. That's a G, right? An R is going to come in and say, I don't think that anyone should leave here until we've gone through every single detail. We've analyzed the situation. If it takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours, right? An I is going to come in and be like, screw this agenda. What did you get up to last night?
But that's not grit.
Wait, hang on. Wait for it.
I's
are innovative.
So far, the R should stand for retarded, because that's what you'd have to be, and the I would stand for idiot.
Well, you're going to say that because you're a G. Most G's think that way. They think that's the best one, right? That is a G mentality. But I would tell you that I's are also very creative. They're very creative. You need an I.
I am creative.
Right, I know, right? So you need that, but you don't necessarily in certain situations, you're not leading with that, you're leading with G. But the I's, in certain situations, you need to lead with an I, right? Now, T's are going to be the ones that are going to sit in that room and be like, oh man, like, why can't everybody just get on? We just need everybody to get on. Now, there's a time and place for that, right?
Let's get on.
Yeah, just get on. Let's just get on with people, right? I've had enough of like all this conflict, right? They get
You mean
frustrated.
get along?
Get along. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
good.
mean get on. All right, that's a British term.
I had to understand what get on means. Everyone just needs to get on. Like, to me, if I say get on, that means like get out.
Well, that's the British coming out of me,
You better get on before you get shit on.
Well, I like that. Ooh, that's a good saying. Get on before you get shit on. It's true. But that's a level of maturity that T's have, that sometimes us G's, because we're so dominant in situations, like we don't give a shit. Like you just got to go do it. I don't give a shit if your feelings are hurt right now. You just got to go do it, right? We'll deal with that later. Just go and get it done. That's what a G mentality is.
So if somebody takes your assessment and they want to be a G,
yes,
do you help them get there?
100%.
So you're helping people turn into G's.
I mean, if you want to say that, sure. But I help them identify all 4 types. I'm trying to not be so
the other
dominant.
3 are like lame.
Well, let's just.
And it's not even grit.
It is. It's
just RIT.
I love that. I mean, that's true. G does lead the grit. I will say that if you want to have really strong, deep levels of grit, you do have to know how to turn that G on. Well, that's, you just do. Because it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily be dominant in it, but you have to know how to tap into it. And that's going to be uncomfortable for people. Like T's probably frightens the crap out of them, right? R's don't like the fact that G's are very fast in their approach. R's are very, very slow. And they're very accurate with things. So reframers are going to say, whoa. That go-getter is a threat to my accuracy. Right? So they don't like it. Well, it's kind of tough shit. Like you have to learn, how do I adapt? How do I overcome that mentality? So G's, I mean, they certainly are. A lot of the leaders, a lot of successful entrepreneurs out there are mostly G's. That you do have R's as well. You do. But if you have R's that are successful, I guarantee they are surrounded by G's.
And I would assume in a leadership position, you kind of need to know all types so you can address them all and deal with them all.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely.
That's what you're teaching.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I teach workshops on this. I have programs in this, right? And this isn't just for corporations or, Fortune 100 companies. It's for the public as well, right? There's a lot that I do there. I mean, this work, Brad, like my book and the system, it's won me 9 worldwide Stevie Awards, right? So this is not just some concept that's just airy-fairy and out there. Like it's been proven, everything is scientifically backed. There's over 200 references in this book. And even Goldman Sachs says, this is revolutionary, right? It's a different approach of how you can not just talk about grit, but you develop it. And that's where it's lacking. Like a lot of people, they don't understand how they can develop this. And if you're asking me, am I trying to make them into G's? Yes, basically, I'm trying to explain, explain, but teach them the strategies and tools that they need to tap into that G.
Get shit done.
Yeah, get shit done. Do you know what? That's actually originally what I was going to say. Get shit done. I just, modified it to get it done. But let's be real. There should be an SH on there.
So how can the Bomb Squad help you?
How can the Bomb Squad help me? I love that. Well, the Bomb Squad can help me by really opening up some doors and introducing me to the people that have the type of platforms that this could be featured on to help millions out there. Because I will tell you now, when I woke from that horrific tragedy, I said to myself, I've only got one main mission now in life. And my mission is to impact at least one person for at least one day for every day that I'm breathing. And that's what I do. So I want to be on, I want to make sure this message gets out. You want to be on
Joe Rogan.
Oh, I want to be on Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Let's get Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, you're listening.
Booked.
You got to get me on that. We got to get this message out, right? This is big. This is not about me.
Well, the
this
good
is
news,
bigger than me.
A good news is a lot of people listen to my show to get guests. So all my guests end up getting invited by all these other ones, but they're not the Joe Rogan ones.
Right. Well, that's
okay. I'm like Joe Rogan Jr.
I love it.
But Joe Rogan's definitely the king. If you could get on that one, buddy. Woo-wee.
Yep.
Patrick Bet-David's got a good reach.
Yep.
I'll try to get you on a few that I know about.
Yeah, thank you.
And get you done. But if the Bomb Squad's listening and you guys are like, man, let's give this girl some support. Get her book. Go follow her. Official Lara Jones on Instagram. Go pick up the grit assessment.
Yep.
But if you have a business and you want to bring her in to speak or train and develop your leaders, that would be another good thing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But more importantly, if you guys really want to help her, bombard some podcasts that you know about, or shoot her the name, or shoot the podcast host a name, and let's get Lara all over the planet.
I freaking love it, Brad. I'm going to take over the world. We're going to do this. Right?
I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
I'll try to get you some shows.
Yeah. Thank you.
So hopefully the Bomb Squad knows some people. I don't know who's listening right now, but I'll bet you there's some people out there.
Yeah, I love that. There's one more thing that people can do if they want. They could text the word GRIT, G.R.I.T, to 55444, but it only works in America. So
555-444?
55444. So if they text the word GRIT to 55444, they actually get a free GRIT accountability guide. But also I'll know, like, okay, they want to have access to that GRIT type indicator as well. But the best thing is to go to my Instagram, follow me. That's how you get the GRIT type indicator. Follow me on Instagram, and then just type the word GRIT. That's what you have to do in one of my latest posts. And then I'll know, like, that's someone that wants my GRIT type indicator. So there's multiple ways to reach out. And also, I do offer some VIP days as well, but that's dependent upon what it is they're trying to get out of that, right? Are they really trying to develop their grit, or are they trying to be a better leader? Like, what's going on, you know? So lots of different ways I can help.
Go blow her up, kids. Go blow her up.
That's right.
I do appreciate you coming in. And yeah, be the hunter.
Yes.
Go get her book. I appreciate you coming in. Next time you come through Vegas, we'll get you back and catch up with you.
I love that.
Till next time, folks, keep it real.